Hey you! You're finally awake! Imperial ambush? Stormcloaks at the border? Rorikstead? What are you talking about? Come on, let's get up and begin the day. You must have been having a really weird dream or nightmare, but you're not going to get anything done laying in bed with your eyes closed. Or so would go the logic of most people living in the strange but wonderful lands of Tamriel. Wake up and seize the day, work hard and get a good sleep so you're ready to do it all over again tomorrow. But for others in Tamriel, dreams can be far more special, useful even, particularly when they receive visions and lessons from a god after drifting away to the dream sleeve. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael and welcome to FudgeMuppet. Vaermina is known as one of the more typically evil Daedra, delighting in nothing more than dreams and nightmares, or harvesting the memories of sleeping souls across Tamriel and leaving them stricken with nightmares, as is the case in Skyrim. Arander, the priest of Mara you meet in Skyrim City of Dawnstar, refers to the nightmares plaguing the town as being a symptom of Vaermina's dark influence, and explains that they will actually lead to permanent damage if left unchecked. Such nightmares are a mere echo of her presence, and while they leave their victims filled with terror and anguish, it is the underlying feeding of memories taking place which is actually the biggest threat of all. I am yet to meet anyone who enjoys nightmares, and those delivered by a Daedric prince would feel all the more real and far more horrifying. Due to this, you're probably not surprised to hear that Vaermina isn't a very popular deity in mainstream society, and yet there are still those who worship her. These worshippers would likely not prescribe to the idea that Vaermina is evil, and in today's video we'll aim to explore their true beliefs, while asking if worshipping this Daedric prince could be worth it for you. Some of these followers, like those from Nightcaller Temple, take part in rituals that use a special gas to send them into a magical slumber. This gas, known as the miasma, slows down the aging process, and the rituals can last for months or even years. This might give the impression that as a follower of Vaermina, you could spend all of your life in a dream, at least from your own perception of time. As we explained in a Vaermina lore video on the channel from 3 years ago, if you did have control of such a dream and could do what you want, it might be the ultimate blue pill fantasy and everything you've ever dreamed of. This could make it worth it for you. There's no denying that a niche example like this, where you'd live in your own dream world for what feels like an eternity, can sound appealing. However, at least with the miasma, it can also be dangerous. Arandor actually explains that the longer an individual is exposed to the miasma, the more the mind can become damaged. Those who've been under the effect of it for extended periods of time have been known to lose their minds entirely. In some cases, a few never awoke at all. Perhaps you could find some other way to dream forever, but as we'll discuss in this video, history paints a different picture when it comes to the reality of worshipping Vaermina and fulfilling her demands. Vaermina has featured across many Elder Scrolls games, though didn't have a quest in Morrowind. That said, she was mentioned by Molag Bal in regards to getting a cure for vampirism, which we don't know much about outside of the fact that in Daggerfall, Morrowind, and Oblivion, becoming a vampire involved nightmarish dreams, so maybe that's how she had something to do with it. In Daggerfall, Vaermina has you track down and kill a lich. At the start of the quest, she basically says that a very wise person once said that power corrupts, and absolute power is absolutely fabulous. Now this dialogue almost comes across as upbeat and exciting even, and I'd love to see this kind of tempting / corrupting side of Vaermina's personality more in the Elder Scrolls 6. Generally speaking, Vaermina doesn't often struggle to have a group of worshippers supporting her. In Skyrim, she seems to actually have many worshippers compared to other Daedric princes. Even those with massive shrines don't usually attract a following as large as the cult found within Nightcaller Temple. However, trying to figure out why she can be popular or worth worshipping to certain individuals or groups is sometimes a little confusing. Daedra such as Namira are a clear choice for those interested in activities deemed repulsive by most societies. Dagon is an obvious pick for those wanting to indulge their destructive tendencies or risk partaking in a chaotic and ambitious revolution. Veneration for Nocturnal makes sense for the thieves of Tamriel, and praying to Hircine seems fitting for those obsessed with the hunt. You get my point here. Even a more obscure Daedric prince like Periite has a cohesive philosophy that sounds logical enough to be agreed upon by his followers. As Kesh the Clean explains, he is the pus in the wound. Oh, proper ones curl their noses, but it's pus that drinks foul humors and restores the blood. I worship Periite, yes, because sometimes the world can only be cleansed by disease. Similarly to Periite's spread of pestilence, Vaermina's spread of nightmares brings much pain, but where is the strong sell of any upside? Where is Vaermina's philosophical appeal? Whatever her mortal followers truly believe in, and what aspects of her sphere they really find personal advantage in, is not crystal clear, at least not at first. Other Daedric princes who bestow various mortals of Tamriel with great pain, such as Molag Bau, are at least straightforward in their aims. Molag Bau is the Daedric prince of domination and enslavement of mortals. He just really enjoys making people suffer. But what is Vaermina's purpose, outside of a vague idea of harvesting memories for herself, infiltrating people's dreams, and spreading horrible nightmares? I know there's that sleeping gas we mentioned, but its use doesn't seem to be a staple among her followers. Being a much more mysterious and unexplored prince when compared to her brothers and sisters, perhaps we should listen closely to the words of her most devout cultists and see what we can learn. In the Elder Scrolls for Oblivion, there are multiple cultists at Vaermina's shrine who you can interact with. Interestingly, 2 of them actually reveal a benefit to Vaermina worship that is rarely spoken about. One explains, "I have seen everything. After you've seen through Vaermina's eyes, nothing can frighten you." Another says, "I have mastered my fears. There is no terror to compare with what Vaermina has shown me in my dreams." I really like this concept. Vaermina cultists may see great benefit in becoming fearless compared to others due to what they really feel like they've experienced within a powerful dream. All threats in the mortal realm would feel meager by comparison to Vaermina's nightmares. If you wanted to worship Vaermina for this purpose specifically, hoping to conquer your fears as you aspire to greater stations in life, then you could find some benefit here, but would it be worth it? Well, based on Arando's ability to simply leave his cult and face no repercussions from Vaermina specifically, then maybe you could just become fearless and then escape, leaving your cultist life behind. But like with many things Daedra, there are risks involved, and at the very least, a moral price to pay. In your efforts of worshipping Vaermina, you'll probably have to partake in some reprehensible activities. There's a good chance you'll find your way into a cult, but even if you don't, Vaermina does enjoy seeing the visions she bestows actually lead mortals to action, so you'd likely have to do something for her in return, or you'll just be a full-on plaything. In some regards, she comes across like a child who wants to burn ants using a magnifying glass and the sun. Mortals are often entertainment to her, and here's a great example to show you exactly what I mean. In Vaermina's tale from 16 Accords of Madness, she makes a bet with Sheogorath regarding a writer, bard, and poet by the name of Darius Shano. He received inspiration from Vaermina in the form of fear-filled dreams, but Sheogorath came along and asked, "But how many truly hate him? For hate is the best indicator of greatness." And so each took their turn to make him hated. They had a decade each, and based on the ages used in the story, they started the bet when Darius was but 19 years of age, meaning Vaermina was already toying with quite a young person to begin with. Vaermina used her decade to fill Darius with the most twisted and horrific dreams, such as men being skinned and eaten alive by other men, and gave him a new understanding of death, leading him to create highly provocative works. These works did lead some to hate him, but they were polarizing in nature, meaning that many others actually loved his disturbing creations. At age 29, his visions ceased. Sheogorath decided to do nothing at all with his time, leading Darius to feel abandoned by the gods who gave him inspiration. He lost his spark, his works became stale and unpopular, and his resentment against Vaermina grew to hatred, then ridicule, and then disbelief. His mind drifted to heresy, and thus a creative philosophy that challenged the gods as well as the public and corrupt state that worshipped them became embedded in his work. His ridicule grew to such intensity that at age 39, when Sheogorath's decade had reached its end, Darius had scorned Tiber Septim himself and was executed publicly in front of a cheering crowd by the local king of Dania. Sheogorath won, and here's what he said of his reward. "For my success I shall accept 80 followers of Vaermina into my service, and the dreamers will awaken as madmen." This story shows you the true nature of Vaermina and how she not only enjoys toying with mortals, but very importantly that even as a devout follower of hers, she would be happy to bet your life with the mad god Sheogorath, which in this story led to these followers, or dreamers, becoming his madmen, likely for eternity. To further make a point, let's quickly look at the Song of Awakening quest in the Elder Scrolls Online, where Vaermina brings the influence of her nightmare-filled realm known as Quagmire into Skald's Retreat in the Rift in Skyrim. Of course you help save the day and have Vaermina's influence dispelled with a song, but after you succeed, she literally refers to mortals as morsels. Beforehand, she also says, "Wriggle all you want, little worm, these fish will not escape my hook." It's quite clear that Vaermina is not particularly fond of mortals, so if you're going to serve her, you'd hope the rewards you get get from it are pretty good. But let's get back to the idea of joining a cult, where even if you are not subject to harm or manipulation from Vaermina directly, you're likely going to have to do away with your conscience. Some of the actions involved in being part of a Vaermina cult are alluded to by Arander. He mentions in dialogue that he's done a lot of questionable things in his life, and that serving Vaermina was a horrible mistake. He admits that he's killed more than he cares to admit, and that being a priest of Vaermina put him very close to dark sorcery at its worst. So it seems like even in that cult specifically, members didn't spend most of their time under the influence of this magical gas, and they definitely got up to rather immoral things. In the Elder Scrolls Online, almost 1,000 years before the events of Elder Scrolls V Skyrim take place, a cult known as the Supernal Dreamers are attempting to help Vaermina in her efforts to dismantle the Daggerfall Covenant. They assisted her in having Stormhaven in High Rock plagued by nightmares. Nightmares and omens were used to take control and manipulate influential figures of the Covenant, such as King Emmerich and his close friend, Orc leader General Godrun. Vaermina is known to be a prince who delivers omens, and in this way you could potentially find another benefit in worshipping her. She might be able to predict bad things before they happen, giving you deep insight and a strong advantage over your adversaries. Perhaps she could also help her followers to understand all of the consequences of a potential path they are considering going down in life or involving a certain situation. Maybe she would even help them spy on other people. Vaermina does have the ability to scry, and in Oblivion you are sent to recover Vaermina's orb, which was stolen by a wizard named Arkved, who then fell into a deep sleep and seemed to have brought some of Vaermina's realm into Nirn. The orb is said to have been used to spy on Titus Mede II by Lord Narafin. However, you'd want to have a strong use for spying, and again also be willing to do immoral things in order to even have a chance at gaining such foresight from her. However, if such premonitions were highly accessible, detailed, and commonplace, then you'd imagine her followers being victorious far more often due to their huge advantage. Where was the forewarning before the orcs attacked Nightcaller Temple? You get what I'm saying here. Going back to the Elder Scrolls Online, it seems that Vaermina's omens can sometimes just be her way of revealing and orchestrating her own plans. In the dreams the player visits in the online game, these omens were not mere warnings of dark events to come, but quite literally Daedra, Watchers specifically, hell-bent on using their power to crush the spirits of their victims with thoughts of betrayal and fear. Two of the omens were literally called the Omen of Fear and the Omen of Betrayal. Another is known as the Omen of Deception, and to summon him you need to light 4 braziers, slay a human sacrifice, and speak the omen's true name, Yakal. Omens can even summon specters, ghostly figures, such as the Spectre of Paranoia. As an example of their influence, the Omen of Fear drove the Breton knight, Sir Hughes, to commit murder against his better judgment. So you can see how deadly these dreams or nightmares and the omens that infiltrate them can be. If you're not willing to support such events unfolding, then worship would likely not be worth it for you. Putting this all together, I don't think it would be unfair for one to speculate that Vaermina's sphere more strongly encompasses the themes of fear and paranoia, and using their negative energy to manipulate the mind, far more than her main theme simply being just dreams and nightmares. In many instances, dreams and nightmares seem more like the main tool used by Vaermina to implement a seemingly more important aspect of her influence, pure terror. Interestingly, the Khajiit of Elsewhere considered Vaermina, as they call her, as a kind of testing god who would try to make Khajiit stray from the path using fear. In the Khajiiti creation myth, different spirits, aka the Aedra and Daedra, were born from litters. They are the children birthed from the interplay between Anu and Faramai, more commonly known as Anu and Padme. Vaermina, however, was not born from any litter, but instead born directly from Faramai's fear of losing her children. Ultimately, Azura killed this dark spirit in the underworld, and now Vaermina can only haunt the Khajiit when they dream. But most importantly, what this means is that to the Khajiit, Vaermina is quite literally a raw manifestation of fear itself, and it aligns with the concept that fear may largely be what she is all about, with nightmares being her most effective method of causing it. This goes against other cultures generally associating her with dreams and nightmares primarily, and then having fear being just a side effect of that. Again, this is simply speculation, but there's no denying she thrives on fear. I mean, of all things, she chooses to have her realm depicted as a nightmare. A wizard who journeyed there, Morian Zenos, reported that every few minutes there was a flash of lightning and reality shifted, always to something more horrible and horrifying. A dark castle one moment, a den of ravening beasts the next, a moonlit swamp, and a coffin where he was buried alive. Regardless of the specifics, seeing her as a testing god to overcome is very different to full-on worshipping her, so let's delve further into the ramifications and incentives behind proper worship and talk more about this Supernal Dreamer's cult. Hopefully we can discover some deeper reasons behind Vaermina worship and what she may unlock for those who follow her. Long ago, Azura foresaw the plot of the Supernal Dreamers before it came to fruition, and helped cultivate the formation of a faction known as the Spirit Wardens. It is ironic to think that Azura is the Daedric prince here looking to the future and providing a warning. The Spirit Wardens were put in place as a bulwark against Vaermina's cult, trying to foil their plans wherever possible. The player works with them in the Elder Scrolls Online, and as you'd expect, comes into combat with the Supernal Dreamers on multiple occasions as they try to assist Vaermina's spread of nightmares and terror. Understandably, many of these conflicts led to the death of cult members, which is something to keep in mind if you're thinking of signing up to be a Vaermina worshipper. As I said earlier, even the cultists in Skyrim's Nightcaller Temple were being attacked by an overwhelming orcish war party, so safety isn't something you could reliably expect. Unsurprisingly, the orcs were seeking revenge after being plagued by nightmares, so if you decide to join a cult of Vaermina, you would have to expect to have vengeance sought upon you as well, as you likely become tasked with helping in the nightmare-spreading action. But ultimately, nightmares isn't the only immoral act that may be expected of you. The Supernal Dreamers perform sacrifices for Vaermina, even using targets they kidnap for the rituals. Kidnapping is a surefire way to make enemies and have vengeance sought upon you. One example was Captain Jerick, a Breton member of the Lion Guard who was kidnapped and taken to a Supernal Dreamers camp where you find him trapped by their magic. Would you be willing to take part in such actions to worship Vaermina? Worse than that, you could end up being a sacrifice yourself. At Vaermina's shrine in Cyrodiil, still during the Second Era, another Breton named Gasparian can be found in a cage. He has actually agreed to be sacrificed to Vaermina and is confident in his decision to be slain. He says, "I don't want your help or your pity. I have willingly offered myself to Vaermina. Only she can save Cyrodiil. If my sacrifice brings peace to others, I go gladly." Interestingly, this Breton wrote a note to another cult member who delivers lectures at the shrine named Molokar. It talks about how he agrees to the terms of the sacrifice, and that the gold should go to his parents in Pell's Gate. He explains he's not doing it for gold, but to have Vaermina, quote, save us, though the payment will help his parents during these dangerous times. An imperial woman, Caledonia Lentinus, is also at the shrine and explains that Nightcaller Molokar inspires her, and that his interpretations of Vaermina's sendings in their dreams shows them their true path. She also says that all come under Vaermina's sway as they sleep, and that the Supernal Dreamers spread word of her divinity across Tamriel. Many of these statements are somewhat generic and to be expected, however, the quotes about truth or a true path make me want to dive deeper. Maybe it could have something to do with the scrying we talked about earlier, and the idea of helping her followers see the path that is best for them in life, a personal truth, if you will. That said, I can't help but get the impression that this true path the Supernal Dreamers talk about is actually a collective path for the followers and their plans going forward as a cult. Still, there seems to be some deeper aspect of Vaermina worship we haven't fully figured out yet, or at least those who follow her think there is. While they often talk about this concept of Vaermina revealing the truth or dispelling lies, it doesn't make a lot of sense at first when you consider that she uses nightmares to manipulate. Vaermina quite literally uses illusions to deceive others, to play a puppet master role and trick people into having thoughts they would not otherwise have. Let's actually see what Molokar, this Nightcaller, who seems to be the leader among the devotees at the Cyrodiil shrine, is preaching. He says, "Always remember, dreamers, that nightmares are Vaermina's truest sendings, piercing the veils that prevent us from seeing the world as it truly is. In nightmares, Vaermina reveals the world's truths. Heed her commands. Last night, dreamers, Vaermina sent an omen of mortal foreboding to me. It ordained a death among us. I sense a prisoner will die soon," which you can only assume is just the sacrifice already planned to happen. And finally, he says, "The presence of unbelievers clouds our dreams and nightmares, cutting us off from Vaermina. Convert all you meet, slay those who refuse." I must admit, out of everything he said, there's still not enough explanation to make it feel like there's a whole lot of substance to it, and I'm quite skeptical that the presence of unbelievers negatively impacts their ties with Vaermina. I mean, to start with, most people do believe Vaermina exists, just like they think all the Daedra do. They just want nothing to do with them. While worship is theorized to increase an entity's power in the Elder Scrolls universe, it's never really been the case with any Daedric prince that others in society choosing not to worship your chosen deity cuts you off from them. Sure, there's the theory that the Thalmor trying to eradicate Talos worship could diminish his power massively, or even remove his presence from the world entirely. However, that's very different to claiming that a lack of additional worshippers weakens your own religious ties to a god. Unless Molochar is maybe trying to say that those who do not voluntarily take part in a new nightmare-filled world are ruining their ability to get even closer to Vaermina. Regardless, he does explicitly reveal to us that as a cult member, you may be tasked with slaying anyone you meet who refuses to convert to following Vaermina. Quite the pushy salesperson you'll end up being. Perhaps the whole thing is just a big coercion pyramid scheme and no one really knows what the worship is all about. Based on how vague it is, I can't say I'm particularly tempted to sign up. Let's try looking to other cultists for words of clarity. I'd really like to invite them to convince me of Vaermina's key message or main lesson. There is a text titled In Dreams We Awaken, which is supposed to be evangelism for Vaermina. It says, "In dreams we awaken. Her reveries call to us. From across Tamriel, her dreams have shown us a true world, a far better world than the one you know. Vaermina lights the sky of our world. Vaermina is the stars of our world. Her 1,000 truths are 1,000 lights in the night sky. The wakeful world is full of suffering and starvation. It is a world of lies. We have come from all corners of this broken world to gather as dreamers of a new, brighter age. She has called us here to Stormhaven. She has awakened us to a better world. We will leave this world of lies behind us." Some cannot comprehend these simple truths. They do not understand her dreams as we do, for they are not true dreamers. She calls to the mighty and the humble, yet those who are found wanting are cast down into madness. Awaken, sleeper, ascend, dreamer. Seek her in dreams and join us. We await you. I would love to get a better insight into what dreams these cultists are being shown. However, everything we ever get to see is quite nightmarish and dark. The dark distortions one can experience in an illusory nightmare, particularly one from Vaermina, would make any suffering or starvation existing on Tamriel pale by comparison. While I'd agree that suffering exists in the world, I can't help but believe that this is the uncomfortable truth, perhaps a truth that is hard for mortals to accept, but a fact nonetheless. I also agree that the world is full of lies. There is no shortfall of greedy or manipulative people who use lies to persuade others to follow certain agendas. But such actions sound a bit familiar, don't they? It sounds like exactly what Vaermina does. The nightmares you visit in the Elder Scrolls Online are full of events and circumstances that are simply not real, but are used to persuade a target into feeling a particular way. In the case of King Emmerich, he was being manipulated by Vaermina's machinations and convinced to doubt himself greatly. When you try to tell him he's in a dream, he says, "No, I wish that were true. It was the other life that was a dream. All that business about the Daggerfall Covenant was just a pack of lies. This is reality. Fear, bloodlust, betrayal. In my heart, I think I always knew that." Is this the truth that Vaermina's followers have always been shown, that reality is fear and bloodlust? I don't know about you, but I think that any suffering in the lands of Tamriel can't really stand side by side with the dark and often gruesome distortions one can experience in a nightmare. Anything Daedra in general often involves more suffering than anything done by mortals in the absence of any divine influences. There's also a poem dedicated to Vaermina called Dream of 1,000 Dreamers, which reads, "Vaermina, dream of 1,000 dreamers, revelations of endless elation, beacon for lost souls, bliss for strong souls, madness for weak souls, Vaermina." Again, it makes it sound as if she's dropping some serious red pills on her followers while they sleep. However, again, I would love to hear what these revelations actually are. What are her 1,000 truths? Messages written between cultists regarding their plans are also just as devoid of any coherent philosophy that has a larger purpose outside of spreading nightmares and fear. A letter to Centaurus written by Nightcaller Chartrand details the following. "The experiment in Coghlan Village appears to have met with significant success. Your work there has inspired us all and indeed caught the attention of our divine mistress." He goes on to explain, "Powerful Daedra, known as Omens, are working behind the scenes in places of power across this kingdom to mimic your achievement. With their aid, we will ensure that the Daggerfall Covenant is plunged into a nightmare from whence it will not be able to return." He also says, "We will need hordes of Scamps, Clanfear, and Dremora to plague these lands and perpetuate the waking nightmare our mistress mistress has envisioned. Make efforts to recruit local citizens to our cause. If they will not join us, they may be used as vessels or blood sacrifices to aid in the summoning of Daedra. There they go with the sacrifices again, and it's not just the torment from nightmares they're planning on bringing, but also the physical dangers posed by hordes of violent Daedra pouring in from Oblivion. If you're wondering what this experiment in Koglin Village was, their constable became increasingly paranoid and started making false accusations, leading to the detainment of various people who had done nothing wrong. By the sounds of it, this scentless character orchestrated the whole thing, hence his praise, and playing through the related quest has you uncover a Daedric symbol from the constable's bed. Before you can get it, a Dremora spawns into the room from Oblivion saying that the constable's dreams are his. The symbol itself appeared as a skull etched with strange glowing symbols, clearly used to cause paranoia-inducing nightmares in the victim. Another quest involved saving a woman's father who has been tied up for a sacrifice after the mother was convinced to join the cult, but it also does not shed any light on a deeper meaning delivered in Vaermina's dreams. Even the text To Dream Beyond Dreams by the Omen of 100 Prophecies, which is said to be the autobiography of the first Nightcaller, does not dive deep enough for my liking. However, there is another text said to be a rallying cry to the followers of Vaermina, titled Dreamers, Our Time Has Come, that provides us with a glimmer of hope when it comes to finding more depth in their ideology. It talks about how as a follower, you have traveled far, wandering across a broken world of lies and suffering. You have journeyed long to chant with the cult of Vaermina. It goes on about preaching the wonders of Vaermina and calling upon others to join the cult and so forth, but very interestingly it then says this: "We will gather our army of dreamers, then we will all return to the city of lies, the city of Wayrest. The heresy of the Eight will be torn down. The dreamers will ascend. Wayrest will become our city of dreams. Our new age has begun. We will join her in eternity. All praise the name of Vaermina." I'm going to be honest, I think there's a good chance many of the cultists are truly just indoctrinated and not aware of any deeper or meaningful philosophy involving Vaermina worship. However, this text specifically mentioning tearing down the heresy of the Eight is fascinating. Firstly, we have a shed of clarity. In fact, it reminds me a bit of what Mankar Cameron was preaching to his Mythic Dawn cult followers when he taught them that the Divines are liars, and that Lorkhan is actually a Daedric prince, with Nirn being his Daedric realm. As far as I'm concerned, tearing down the heresy of the Eight can mean nothing else but dispelling supposed lies of the Eight Divines. Perhaps the philosophy Vaermina is showing them is based around the idea that the Eight Divines are truly dead, and therefore worshipping them is futile and returns minuscule rewards at best, and far less than is promised. She could posit that Daedra, on the other hand, have not forsaken mortals, and because they did not give up their power in the creation of the world, they have the ability to exert a stronger influence to make the world a better place with less suffering if given more control, Vaermina's method being through spreading nightmares. Remember, this is just me speculating, but it is certainly plausible that the ideology she is promoting falls along these anti-Daedric lines based on this heresy of the Eight. Quote, "I would love for more Vaermina cultists to talk about this topic, but the absolute lack of discussion, particularly from the mouths of any preachers, just makes me think that many don't actually have a crystal clear understanding of what Vaermina might be trying to show them. And I say might be because all we can tell from her actions is that she really wants to have enough followers helping her to plunge various places in Tamriel into horrific nightmares. But let's look at another area of thought and see what speculation we can come up with as we try to make our way a bit deeper than the words of the cultists have taken us. What if Vaermina's truths are highlighting the idea that reality in the Elder Scrolls world, or at least what mortals and gods experience as real, is in fact a dream? It would align well with her sphere if dreams truly are at the forefront of it. There's various uncanon ideas surrounding this concept of the Godhead that are rooted in in-game concepts from the 36 Lessons of Vivek and Hermaeus Mora's Black Book, Waking Dreams, which mentions an uncaring Godhead. But essentially the idea is that there's an unconscious dreamer who, while asleep, is responsible for the entire Elder Scrolls universe itself, gods and all. To realize you are in the dream is incredibly confronting, and it is said to either make you zero-sum or achieve Kim. Zero-summing is a somewhat popular theory behind the Dwemer's disappearance, and the idea is essentially that upon realizing everything is a dream and that your entire life is fake, an illusion, you cannot make sense of it, and your inability to comprehend it leads you to instantly vanish from the dream, or reality. Achieving Kim is said to happen when you realize the reality of the universe as being a dream, yet instead of rationalizing yourself out of existence and zero-summing, you are able to hold the paradoxical belief that reality is false, yet you as a part of that false reality are still real. It's like a stubborn sense of ego within you rejects the notion that you don't exist and simply declares, I am real, allowing you to ascend to a godlike state. Vivek and Talos are examples of those who are said to have achieved such apotheosis and gained awareness of the dream, much like a lucid dreamer. They are said to have the ability to manipulate the world after achieving this state, such as when Talos retroactively changed Cyrodiil from jungle to the current environment we can explore today. Perhaps Vaermina has given her followers a small taste of that truth, or a half-truth, showing them that the world they knew is a false dream, but then selling them the idea that her realm and the dreams they experience from her are the true reality, a classic bait and switch. They do talk about ascending to a higher state, from being a sleeper to becoming a dreamer. This could be an intentionally watered-down version of the truth, or it could be a reflection of what Vaermina truly believes. If Vaermina really was born from fear, as the Khajiit believe, then perhaps she really believes her nightmares and the fear they bring are the truth. After all, fear is literally the source of her divinity and her very being. With Vaermina knowing a fair bit about dreams, along with the dubious concept of all reality being the dream of a godhead, then it could make sense that she has at least figured out that reality is not what mortals think it is. However, I don't think her followers are actually given knowledge, if she even has it, that would lead them to any sort of universal realization that would result in things like zero-summing or Kim, nor do I think that would be particularly beneficial to her. Perhaps her truth is similar to Dagoth-Ur's truth, which was ultimately misguided. Dagoth-Ur is cited by Vivek to be a false dreamer who projects himself into reality even after death. Perhaps Vaermina too is a false dreamer born from the concept of fear, whose perception of truth is warped, such as believing that she, as a manifestation of fear, contains the truth of the universe. What if followers of Vaermina believe that they are all really part of Vaermina's true dream, her nightmare, and that she is almost like a kind of godhead type being? It is certainly interesting food for thought, but it is exactly that, speculation. Furthermore, here's another potential tie-in. Now this might be giving Elder Scrolls Online more credit than is due, but it would be interesting if King Emmerich saying, "This is reality, fear, bloodlust, betrayal," actually tied back to the whole truth and heresy of the Eight preaching. Vaermina teaching the notion of fear being reality could come from this concept we talked about of Vaermina being birthed from it, but then the idea of betrayal as reality could allude to the same teachings that Mankar proposes, that Lorkhan was lord of this realm that mortals now inhabit, the reality they now experience, but Lorkhan was betrayed by those who served him, the Eight Aedra. Regardless of the truth, it doesn't really seem like this potential for enlightenment is particularly worth worshipping her for anyway. The risks we've talked about, the need to take part in immoral things, and very largely, the lack of apparent benefits versus some of the rewards other Daedric princes could give you instead, it just doesn't do it for me. Even one of her artifacts we haven't discussed, the Skull of Corruption, doesn't tend to be as useful as many other artifacts bestowed by different Daedric princes. In Skyrim, you can harvest dreams and unleash some mid-tier damage from the staff, and in previous games you could use it to make a clone out of someone to attack them. That could have some interesting applications. But generally speaking, if you're looking for an edge in combat, it's probably safer to just get really skilled at magic or melee combat instead of sinking your time into following a religious path. Again, if you wanted to worship Vaermina in an attempt to conquer your fears, or were a bard using her for creative inspiration, then perhaps it could be worth it for you if you greatly desire her dark touch. However, I think there's other ways to obtain courage or creativity that are less likely to lead you down a path of terror and regret. The other benefit we talked about was the potential to gain insight into the future, be it through scrying or being sent visions while you sleep, but from what we've seen, her visions haven't been particularly useful in warning her followers of hostile threats to come. A niche final option could be that you're just obsessed with alchemy and will stop at nothing to learn every secret about it. Priests of Vaermina have been known to master alchemy and create potent mixtures that can command sums in the tens of thousands of septims on the black market. One such potion is Vaermina's Torpor, allowing the drinker to experience the dreams or memories of another and actually travel through them, and then appear in a different location. At the end of the day, only you can decide if everything we've discussed makes worship worth it for you. Personally, I think to worship Vaermina, you'd have to be deranged enough to want to sacrifice people and take part in all the other activities her cult seems so fond of, just to have a shot at gaining a benefit which may not be all that useful or guaranteed. You'd also want to be really obsessed with dreams or nightmares, because if you're simply looking for dark dealings, there are more useful princes to explore. Some sources also hint that Vaermina can be somewhat hard to satisfy as well. She once gave a small pocket realm of quagmire to a group of Daedra worshippers hidden deep in the mine known as Hossen's Folly on Bleakrock Isle. A note from Elder Scrolls Online called Dark Ministrations talks about this and includes the following. I had expected our pocket of Oblivion to be twice the size it is now. Is the lady displeased with us? Some of us have hatched a plan to sacrifice more of the faithful. Surely that will capture her attention and earn our just reward. That all said, I can at least see how some people can fall for Vaermina's Daedric illusions and the promise of truth. If Vaermina decided to make any standard inhabitant of Tamriel experience all of these incredibly vivid lucid dreams and spoke to them from her position as a higher power, it's hard to really blame them for being convinced, though that doesn't absolve them of the judgment for all the horrors they may go on to take part in. So tell me, would you worship the Mistress of Nightmares, the Weaver of Dreams, Vaermina? It certainly seems like an undertaking that could lead to some of the more interesting and unique experiences on Tamriel, but I feel that the dangers of dealing with such a malevolent Daedric prince, particularly one so obsessed with drenching Tamriel citizens in fear and terror, far outweigh the pros. Do you think that you'd end up living in your own utopian dream world? Perhaps you would momentarily, but there's no telling how long such a thing could last. What may feel like an eternity to you in a dream may be worth it, but no dreams last forever, and eventually it comes time to wake up and come back to reality. A reality where you worship a deity who would love nothing more than to inflict torment and have you risk your own life to help her bring fear upon others. I'll also add in here that it would have just been so cool, or would be so cool, to see the concept of fear expanded upon. Vaermina cultists in the Elder Scrolls 6 could easily focus on a philosophy that promotes fear as the human emotion behind all great beginnings, from actions in one's personal life to massive societal achievements. Think of how much stems from humanity's fear of failure, the fear of not fulfilling their potential, the fear of missing out on all kinds of things, of not being good enough, from passionate romance to power and wealth. Whether we like it or not, fear moves mountains, and I think this is something that could actually add more nuance to Vaermina worship than currently exists. However, from everything we've actually seen in-game, I'm going to say that worshipping her is definitely not worth it. But please do share your thoughts below and like the video if you want more content like this. Social media links can be found in the description, along with a link to our Patreon and also to our merch shop if you want to help support the channel and get a sensational tee. My name is Michael, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.